So, the bigger company you become and the more money you're moving and the more regulated you become, you tend to start to create more controls and more mechanisms to understand what's happening. You got to talk with regulators. You have other things. Some of those things tend to crush innovation. And to be competitive, to improve, to innovate, what we want to do is we want to move from a stance. We want to create, if we can't change our entire company stance, we want to create a place where we can move from crushing innovation to crushing it with innovation. And so I'm going to argue in this case, it's sort of an experimental place. And this can apply to tech and it can apply to non-tech. And so I'm in IT, so the back half of this will be IT. Really what we're trying to do is manage the tension between trying to protect ourselves and do the right things with data and controls and provide the right observability. We want to balance that against the ability to innovate and explore and experiment. And so, the more controls we have, the more we try and understand what's happening so we can meet requirements and NFRs too. That tends to lengthen the cycle time, whereas innovation that works best if we have a really short cycle time. And in production, we may have compliance and controls that need to be maintained. We've got SOX audits, we've got other things. We would like to walk away from those in the innovation area until we get serious about something, right? And in a lot of cases, the company or the organization is driving what needs to be done on the production side. And so, but on our case for the innovation and exploration, we want people to do that on their own. We want them to self-actualize a bunch of ideas and take those to completion or to a point where we can decide whether they're a good idea or not, right? And why do I keep moving the mouse on the screen? I have no idea. So you're in an innovation zone. You need an innovation zone. And I'm going to do these from the bottom. This slide should be reversed. If there's no place for people to fail with ideas, then you do not have an innovation zone and you need to figure out how to make that happen. If there's no place for people to gain new skills, you see this a lot on the IT side, there is no sandbox where you can play. Most of the people I know that are serious about their craft end up, like in a cloud environment, end up having their own cloud environments where they fork over a little bit of cash to try and play with stuff because the companies they work for just can't figure out how to provide a place for them to learn new techniques or to figure out a better way to do something. The third area, which is really the third and the fourth bullet, if your experimentation timelines feel like a production timeline, you've got too many review processes and other things on it, then you need to find a way, a zone, a place for people to do that experimentation where they can iterate on that relatively quickly and they could fail quickly or they could succeed quickly. So the main two kinds of innovation I'm going to talk about, I really kind of referring to here are process innovation and data innovation. And the process innovation in a lot of ways can apply to IT and non-IT. Originally I did this for cloud, right? I want an innovation sandbox for cloud IT, but it applies for other things too. In the process innovation space, we need a place we can work with new tools and new techniques. If we would decided we want to do voice recognition or automated counselor, kind of thing, we need a place we can play for that. Maybe we're not going to really hook it up, but we want to, and then maybe we'll have like a semi sandbox later where we can roll it out to a few people and see what they think. In the process innovation side, we really need a place to do iterating. It shouldn't be a one report to the VPs to determine if we succeeded or failed, kill the project. We might take a couple stabs at it. And in process innovation, the other thing is I really want a place where we can improve people's skills. The people are a big expense. They're a big opportunity. And if we can figure out a way to train them, a place for them to train them, that might be an innovation sandbox where they can learn how stuff works. So like I might want to learn how to use reporting tools to do something, but I can't really work with production data because maybe that's a dumb idea. Instead, I need a place where I can play with those tools and figure it out. On the data innovation side, I'm definitely thinking of IT here. And in this case, it's I want the opportunity to create new data. I might have a way we can take data or pull in data from third parties, pull in data from public sources. Maybe I want to find new meaning to the data. That's a lot of times that's what we do in ML and feature exploration. We're trying to come up with correlations for use cases for data that we've already got that we're underusing. And so I want to do data innovation. On the IT side of this, I'm going to say that there's 4 quadrants for the innovation sandbox. The upper right is the most restrictive. It's our production systems. It's the place that can get us in trouble with regulators or customers. It's the place where we make all the money. So we have production compute controls, production data controls, We have sensitive data in there, personally identifying information, PII, or personally confidential information, depending on your naming conventions. And we'll have production connectivity. So if I'm playing in the production environment, it may mean that I have access to other systems besides my innovation area, and that can cause its own issues. There's a production-like, but less production environment, which is test. It doesn't have any production data in it, doesn't have any sensitive data in it. Sometimes in a UAT environment, that's not true, and that's because third parties don't always know how to create non-production data, so they give it to you accidentally, but we'll ignore that for this. And we have kind of production-like compute controls and production-ish data controls, and the whole notion there is we can play in that environment, but it's really not meant for experimentation because it's still the place where we're shaking out our production controls. So it shouldn't be too much more wide open. It's somewhat, but not as much. I'm going to look in the bottom right corner, and probably because in data exploration, a lot of times we do this with production sensitive data. And so there's a bunch of controls around it, but you're able to manually manipulate it. And in theory, you don't have permission to connect to other out of scope data sources. So you can look at the data sources that you're allowed in production to look at, but you can't really explore with other verticals or other areas. And so the data exploration is pretty cool. A lot of places struggle with that. You can build your own transforms and build your own data sets. But that's still an exploration area, and companies should have one of those. I'm going to cost the last quarter the innovation zone, and that's because, and I'm thinking about IT, this isn't production, doesn't have production controls, doesn't have production compliance, doesn't have production provisioning restrictions, and it doesn't have production data. So that means we can look at test data and play with it. And I want to use new, for me, it's the cloud a lot of times. I want to use a new cognitive service, use another service. And the only way to do that is if you give me an innovation zone, because we haven't even approved this service in any of the other zones. So I need a place where I can play with it and we can decide whether it's even, you see this a lot. Hey, I'm thinking of using this service. Well, you have to go through a full evaluation to decide whether we can use that. And it's like, I don't even know if it's a good idea yet. Where can I play with it? Well, right now, that place you can play with it is at home with your own account. And that seems stupid. So problems created by innovation zone. This is actually probably one of the biggest areas that the drawbacks besides expense. I'm going to work from the bottom because I think these are in the opposite order. If we're going to create an innovation zone and we think that we want to take it to production. A lot of times we've done so many interesting things in the innovation zone, we have no way to bring it to production. And so sometimes teams will try and force those things into production. I built this. We have to make this work. I promised the business was what would happen. And so what you really need is you need production guardians who are empowered to stop people from taking their poorly thought out or poorly implemented, usually, innovations into production. We want to take that thing they innovated with, but we need to make sure that it meets our production and regulatory requirements. And it worked in the innovation zone should not be a reason that you're allowed to bring any random piece of crud into your production area. And one of the other areas you'll run into, I've seen this before, people are not in good faith. They actually will build things in an innovation zone and run out of time. And then they will use the VPs on their business side to argue that this needs to be shoved into production and they'll surely fix it later. I hate that. They almost never fix it later. And then their headaches become your headaches. So this is actually a big negative for this. Another area, like on the data side, I went and played with a bunch of data. I created this really cool data set. We did this machine learning. It turned out really awesome. Let's bring it in. But I don't remember all the transforms I did. I can't tell you what I did with this. I can't tell you the exact versions of all the source systems that were combined for it. And so now I've got a really cool idea that doesn't meet our requirements or regulatory requirements. Or making sure we don't get sued because you did some stupid redlining thing by pulling in the bad data set. In those cases, the innovation zone just created nothing but a headache for you. So I think the net of this is what we want is we want a playground. We want a place where people can get work done, where they can use the high-level services we've already got or capabilities so that it's not a complete new build-out, but it's a place that we can iterate, and then we can have to have some kinds of controls that we can bring that stuff into our production area. What we want to do is we want a place where people can color outside the lines and break out of our current behavior and do a little bit of brainstorming and hopefully come up with something new that's really important. So I hope this was useful. Leave feedback as usual. Have a great day.